On my way down here from Brooklyn, as I said, I came down the I-95, and it reminded me in that process, because there was a big tie-up just outside of Baltimore, and I was kind of getting a little impatient, if I'm completely honest with myself, and I noticed some of my fellow drivers were too. And I've started to notice, because I drive a lot, that some people have this little trick that when it gets to an exit, they pretend that they're going off, but they're really just trying to get around you. You never do that, do you? No. Father Walter Bergman, who I once spoke to, was a very distinguished Jesuit and a fine preacher. I picked him up in Brooklyn one time to come and speak at our little church there. And as we're coming down a very similar situation where you get towards the Brooklyn Bridge, we had this beautiful, polite conversation, very nice and dignified, and he was a very dignified man. But all of a sudden, he lost it. And he said to me, "Don't let them in. Don't let them in." I said, "Excuse me, Father? Don't let them in." He said, "There's going to be a special place in hell for those people, huh? Who do they think they are?" I'm reminded of it because coming down on the highway, I was thinking that myself. I know this trick. And then as those people are coming in, the words are coming into my head. My mother, if she could have heard them, would have washed my mouth out with soap. Huh? So then I say to myself, okay, you say that you're a Christian, you say you're a Catholic, you say you're a priest. What does it mean? I mean, really, what does it mean? Not just as a theoretical thing in church, or when you're saying your prayers, or when you're asking for something from God. What does it mean when you're in that situation, in your car, on the highway? What does it mean when you're at the kitchen sink and you're the one doing the washing up again? What does it mean when you're in the supermarket line and that person, as we like to say in Brooklyn, makes you feel like you're chopped liver? Huh? What does it mean then to be a follower of Christ? What does it then mean to be someone who says that this is not just a symbol, this cross, but a way of life? Perhaps you saw Pope Francis recently when he went to Rio for World Youth Day. And Monsignor and I were discussing this last night. And the image that I have of Pope Francis and the many beautiful things he's done, including choosing that name, was that I saw him walking up the steps of the aeroplane to get on that flight to Rio. I'd like to go to Rio too, by the way. Walking up those steps. In recent years, Alitalia, the Italian airline, has made available a private jet for the Pope to go around his world tours. Pope Francis said, "No, I want to go on an aeroplane like everyone else." And then when he walked up those stairs, did you see him carrying that little black bag? Huh? If I was a Pope, I'd have someone else carrying my bags. Well, a journalist asked him what was in his little bag. He said, "My razor and my prayer book." Why does Pope Francis give us that image? No, more importantly, not the image. Why does he try to live like that? And we've seen so many examples of it. In these readings today, that first one from Sirach, there in the responsorial psalm, and unmistakably in the gospel, it's the same image. I am humbled by that image of Jesus saying to his host, "Don't invite your friends and relatives and wealthy neighbors. Invite the poor." I know a couple of times, as in our rectory, we've tried to do versions of that in our own little way, but if I'm honest with myself, I have not taken that gospel very literally. Why does Jesus say it? Why does the Almighty God, the all-powerful creator of the universe, the one who was innocent, without sin, the one who was all love, come into the world first as a little baby, then as a humble man, and then when he goes out, rather than using his God power to get out of the trouble, he submits himself to this indignity, this death. Why does he consistently, particularly in Luke's gospel as we have today, make himself vulnerable with the vulnerable? When my brother, my older brother, who in his own words is a bit of a curmudgeon, to be completely honest, had his first child, and he came out of the delivery room and I saw the tears streaming down his face, he said these memorable words, and I think it's gave me an insight into why God came as a child. He said, I never knew my heart had this capacity for love. Children, to be completely honest, and take this in the right sense, babies are pretty useless, really, they are. I mean, you have to do everything for them, no? But that's what they're incredibly good at, because they're so vulnerable, opening our hearts. Is this part of what Jesus is getting at in this gospel? That when we make ourselves small with another, when we make ourselves poor deliberately by our choice, by our love for another human being, as God does for us, is that what he's asking us to do? To open our hearts? I know when I'm on the I-95 and I'm tempted to not let that person in, that voice in my head is the voice of the guy in the little red jumpsuit with the pitchfork. And the opposite voice is true too, no? Whenever that voice is saying to me, be bigger than yourself, be loving, be kind, be generous, be the first to forgive, be the one who is forgiving even sometimes when you do not get back. That's the voice of God, no? Maybe some of you have had the extraordinary privilege and burden of saying these words to each other, maybe even right here in this church. And we say that this sacrament, the sacrament of marriage, is, and again, forgive me, Father, for it's not priesthood that we say speaks most clearly about the nature of God, but marriage. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life, for better and for worse. Yeah, why did they put that in there? Huh? Richer and poorer, sickness and in health. Why do we say those words? Why do we say they speak of the nature of God? Because we're masochists? Because we're realists? No, we say those words because I believe with all my heart that they are a very clear invitation into the mystery of the cross. Not as an abstract idea or as a pious thought, but as a reality. As real as making myself vulnerable for another. As giving up something I want for someone else. I like to say, if someone tells you that they love you and they never help you take out the garbage, don't believe them. Every time I'm in my community house and I see the garbage full there, I remember, Mark, this is what you preach. You better practice it, baby. Huh? Practice what you preach. Not just as an abstract idea and from a pulpit, but in reality. Driving the road, in the supermarket line, taking out the garbage. This is the reality as I understand it. That when we're full of ourselves, and sometimes unavoidably, for our own worries, our own fears, our own desires, our own needs, whenever we're full of ourselves, there's no room in us for anyone, not even for God. And I know exactly what that's like, because sometimes I have to be completely honest, I am full of myself. I hate to say it, but it's true. I felt a little bit full of myself on the I-95, to be honest. My agenda, my need. And when I'm full of myself, I have no room for anyone else. No room, not even for God. I like to imagine that we're like a glass of water. And when we're full, we cannot receive. In order to receive, you have to be emptied a little. You have to pour a little bit out. This is the very nature of God that we say. Jesus poured himself out completely on the cross. And as Catholics, we have the extraordinary privilege to come to the Eucharist because Jesus held not back one part of his life. He poured himself out completely. That the pouring out of ourselves, the ability to give, is the most divine of human characteristics. And so often it seems like it's the opposite. No, I have to protect myself. I have to look after my own needs. I became a sponsor with CFCA since 1995. I saw an advertisement in a magazine, I think it was American Magazine. I saw a little kid's face and I said, you know, as a priest I could probably do this. I was thinking of my brother actually and what it had done to him by having 2 daughters. I thought, I need that in my life. And so I became a sponsor to a little kid in Mexico, Karen. At first, what I thought I was doing was helping that poor little kid go to school and eat properly. Absolutely, I'm doing that. What I did not recognize was that that kid was teaching me the truth of the gospel. What do we say at the end of Mass in the prayers here? It is in giving that I receive. Is that just an idea? It's in giving that I receive. When you have a dinner party, invite those who cannot pay you back. Why? Because unless I create that space in me, I will always be full of myself. This is my definition of hell, a universe where I am myself, the only person, I'm God, and I've got only myself to worship. That's my definition of hell. I got my way. Don't be afraid of the little inconveniences of life. They are the cross in a very practical, loving way. Don't submit to abuse. Don't be part of violence in any form or fashion. But most of the little inconveniences, and sometimes the big ones of our life, are the cross in a very simple, dramatic way. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid when you have to take out the garbage. Don't be afraid when you're not getting something back. This is God asking, knocking at the door of my heart, saying, let me in. I want to give you one very simple, practical way to do that. And why I'm bold enough to go all over the country almost every weekend and ask people to do it is because I believe with all my heart this truth of today's readings. If we allow ourselves to be open and empty ourselves a little bit for those in need, they can be an extraordinary gift to us. As I was standing at the table with Monsignor last night, he pointed out there's a little girl there. He said, is that really her name? She's 6 years old, she's from Kenya, and that is her name. Gift. G-I-F-T, gift, huh? I believe that if you were to invite that little girl into your life, she would be a gift from God. When you open the insides of the folders, you see their little stories. And those who are sponsors will know this reality too. You know, sometimes we think we have a hard life, and maybe in some ways we do. But, you know, it can be rather relative. When you read Gift's story, you see that the family is having great difficulty getting enough money to pay for the girl's school fees. They've got another child at school, and why they've come to ask us is if we might be able to help to keep Gift in school. I ask you, if it's in your heart, within your means, could you take Gift home today? Be a gift in that kid's life and let her be one in yours. I was recently in Guatemala and I spoke to a woman there by the name of Juana Mendoza, and I asked her what the sponsorship of her little boy meant to her and her family by someone here in the States. And she said, Padre, es un milagros. Father, it is a miracle. This is the model at CFCA. We're not trying to solve the whole of world poverty. We're just trying to help one person at a time. $1 a day, a cup of coffee, unless you go to Starbucks a lot, I guess, huh? $1 a day, $30 a month. Can you think about it? Do you have it in your heart to do it? Can you give a little bit of yourself to someone in need? Here is the other side of the vulnerable spectrum. It is the elderly. And I just picked up a woman there from Mexico, Isidra. I hope I'm saying that correct. What happens, and many of you will know this far better than I do from first-hand experience, is that when you get older, sometimes you become a little pushed aside and maybe not always looked after as the way that you need. and you don't have the flexibility of your resources like maybe some other people do. It's particularly true among the poor. What happens for a woman like this is that sometimes if you can't work and you don't have family to support you, you simply do not eat. Could you take her home? Help her to live out the remainder of her life with the dignity she deserves as a child of God. I was not so long ago in Kenya, and I took a group here from Brooklyn we were building a little school. We had a great time. And in that process, every night when we come home from the projects, we were looking forward to dinner. And every night we came home, it was the same thing, rice and beans, rice and beans. And we're going, we're sick of rice and beans, huh? So one night, in a kind of slow, silent protest, we all decided we weren't going to eat the rice and beans. So then we got up the next morning, and guess what we had for breakfast? Leftover rice and beans, huh? So I'm thinking about my stomach, thinking about my complaints, and I get onto the truck and we to go down to the project to build the little schoolhouse. And we picked up some of the kids on the way down to help us. And a young man sat next to me in the back of the truck. And because I had my mind on my belly, I said to him rather sillily, "What did you have for breakfast, young man?" Pause. He looked me straight in the eye. I'll never forget it. I think part of what this gospel is talking about. He looked me straight in the eyes, and without recrimination, without guilt, he said to me, "Father, I did not have breakfast." For many of our sisters and brothers in the world, the truth is that one meal a day is an incredible gift, let alone 3 in snacks. In that same area, I would often complain that the women of a night time around dinner time were always screaming at the kids. I said, why do they always scream at the kids? Shouldn't they be polite with their kids? And they said, well, Father, when a woman comes home, a mother comes home and she's been unable to find work and food for the kids, in order to distract them from their hunger, she yells at them so they'll get so upset that they'll go to sleep forgetting that they're hungry. It's not right. It's not right. We live with extraordinary opportunities in our life, let me put it that way. And I want to give you one. To just open your heart, to empty yourself a little bit. I know, actually, that's what I'm asking. To give up a little bit of yourself, maybe sometimes even to rearrange your agenda. I know I do it too, because I have two kids I sponsor. And sometimes I have to make a choice about what I'm going to use that money on. I ask you to not be afraid of that choice, to empty yourself a little bit and open your heart to someone else. It is the gospel. It is the gospel. I do believe in practice, in a very simple way, it's what it means to be a Catholic, not just as a thought, but as a reality. I'll be down the back of the church, and Terry, who's already a sponsor, will be there with me. And I'd love to set you up on this adventure. There's just a little simple form in it we ask you to fill out. And you'd be an extraordinary miracle, as I said, in their life. But in a surprising way, if you can hear me, they would be a gospel gift to you. God bless you. Thank you for your time and your attention this morning. Thank you.